This tutorial guides you through React installation, project setup, and creating your first React component and application. First, create a new React project using Vite with the command npm create vite.latest my React app, template React, then move into the project directory, install the dependencies, and start the development server to run your first React application. After creating the React project, move into the project directory using cd my React app. Next, install the dependencies and run the development server. Once it starts, open http://localhost:5173 in your browser to see your React application running locally. The React application contains several folders and files. The Node modules folder stores all the project dependencies installed through npm. The public folder contains static assets, such as images and icons, that are served directly to the browser. The src folder contains the main source code of the application, including React components, styles, and logic. Other important files include package.json, which manages project dependencies and scripts, and vidconfig.js, which contains Vite configuration settings. Now that the React application is running, navigate to the src folder and open the app.jsx file. This file contains the default React component created by Vite. You will notice some sample code, including logos, styles, and example content. To make the project easier to understand, remove all the existing code inside the component and start with a simple example. Next, create a function component named app. In React, a function component is a JavaScript function that returns JSX, which describes what should be displayed on the screen. Inside the app component, return a div element containing an h1 heading with the text Hello React. After writing the code, save the file. Since Vite supports hot module replacement, HMR, the browser will automatically refresh and display the updated content without requiring a manual page reload. When you open the browser at http://localhost:5173, you should see the message Hello React displayed on the page. This is your first React component. It demonstrates the basic structure of a React application, including a function component, JSX syntax, and the export default app statement that makes the component available to other parts of the application. As you continue learning React, you will build more complex components by combining JSX, JavaScript logic, state, and props. At this stage, the goal is to understand that React applications are built using components, and each component is responsible for rendering a portion of the user interface. Now we will update our React application to make it interactive using a simple counter example. First, open the app.jsx file inside the src folder and remove the existing code. Then, we will create a new function component called app. Inside this component, we will use the useState hook to create a state variable called count, which will start from 0. This state will help us keep track of how many times the button is clicked. Next, we will return a div with a class name container. Inside it, we will display a heading called My First React App. Below that, we will show a message like you click the button X times, where X will be replaced by the current count value. After that, we will create another div with a class name button group. Inside this section, we will add 3 buttons. The first button will decrease the count by 1 when clicked. The second button will increase the count by 1. The third button will reset the count back to 0. When you click any of these buttons, the state will update automatically, and React will re-render the UI to show the new value without refreshing the page. Finally, we will export the app component as the default export so it can be displayed in the browser. The count value is stored in React state, and whenever we update it using setCount, React detects the change and refreshes only the part of the UI that depends on that value. This is one of the main advantages of React. It makes the user interface fast and dynamic without reloading the entire page. Each time you click increase, the number goes up by 1. If you click decrease, it goes down. And if you click reset, it goes back to 0. This simple example shows how React components, state, and events work together. We will style our React application using the app.css file. First, open the app.css file in the src folder. Inside this file, we will write some simple CSS to make our app look better and more centered on the screen. We will target the container class and apply a few styles. We will set the text alignment to center so that all the content appears in the middle. Then we will add a top margin of 50 pixels to move the content slightly down from the top of the page. Finally, we will change the font family to a clean and modern style like Arial, sans serif so the text looks more readable and professional. After adding these styles, save the file and go back to the browser. You will immediately see the changes applied because Vite automatically updates the page without refreshing. Now your React app will look more organized, with centered content and better spacing. We will style the button section to make it look more organized and aligned. Open the app CSS file again and locate the button group class. Inside this class, we will add some spacing and layout styles. First, we will set a top margin of 20 pixels so that the buttons have some space from the content above. Then, we will use display flex to arrange all buttons in a single row. After that, we will use justify content center to align the buttons in the center of the page. Finally, we will add a gap of 10 pixels so there is equal spacing between each button. After saving the file, go back to the browser and you will see that the buttons are now neatly aligned in the center with proper spacing, making the UI look much cleaner and more professional. We will add padding of 10px 20px so the buttons have enough space inside and look balanced. Then we will set the font size to 16px to make the text clear and readable. After that, we will change the cursor to pointer so it shows the hand icon when hovering over the button. Next, we will set the background color to blue and the text color to white for good contrast. We will remove the default border by setting border none, and we will add a border radius of 5px to give the button slightly rounded corners. Finally, we will add a transition effect for the background color with a duration of 0.3s, so when we add hover effects later, the change will look smooth and animated. Next, we will add different colors and hover effects to each button to make the UI more interactive and visually clear. We will keep the main button styling the same, but we will customize each button based on its function. The increase button will stay blue, the reset button will be red, and we will also add hover effects so that when you move your mouse over the buttons, the color changes smoothly and improves the user experience. For example, the increase button will have a blue background, the reset button will have a red background, and both buttons will show a slightly darker shade when hovered to give visual feedback. This helps users clearly understand which button performs which action. To achieve this, we will use separate class names for each button and add hover styles in CSS. With the transition effect we added earlier, the color change will look smooth and professional instead of instant. Now we will run our React application and test everything in the browser. Open your terminal and make sure you are inside your project folder. Then run the command npm run dev to start the development server. After running this command, Vite will compile your project and give you a local development URL, usually http://localhost:5173. Now open your browser and go to http://localhost:5173. You will see your React application running with a heading, the counter text, and the buttons we created earlier. At this point, you can start testing the functionality. Click the increase button and you will see the number go up by 1 each time you click it. Then click the decrease button and the number will go down. If you click the reset button, the counter will go back to 0. As you interact with the buttons, notice how the page does not refresh. Instead, React automatically updates only the part of the screen that changed. This is because of the state system using useState, which allows React to re-render components efficiently. With this, your first React project is complete. You have successfully created a working counter application with interactive buttons, styling, and real-time updates in the browser. We successfully created our first React application using Vite. We started by setting up the project, installing dependencies, and running the development server on http://localhost:5173. Then we explored the project structure and understood important folders like src, public, and node modules. After that, we cleaned the default code in app.jsx and created our own simple function component. We added a basic hello React message and then improved it by building a counter application using the useState hook. This helped us understand how state works and how React updates the UI dynamically without refreshing the page. From here, we can move on to more advanced topics and start building more powerful React applications.